Your experience is nowhere near the same as mine. We never had to speak about how hard things were because it was just unspoken and known.
Certain things that you were really strong at, there were certain things that I were really strong at.
You never influenced me enough to drink one of your smoothies.
Yeah.
So we bonded on, this isn't right, I want to change.
Yeah.
Do you? Yes, then let's do that. And let's be honest, so everybody knows, we don't agree on a lot of things. We don't.
Since when? Hang on. You sat me down. What you did there was not okay. And I was like, why? And what is the best and worst thing about working together? Stop writing a really long list. Welcome to Conversations That Care, the podcast brought to you by the Care Leaders. I'm Luke Rogers, and joining me is Karylle Phillips. In this episode 3, we're going to look at relationships.
Lots of people have asked me, how did these two get together? Because it is different, right? That we are not siblings or haven't been in care together to come together and say, right, we're going to do this together with two different views, two different experiences, but with the same aim and focus. And that actually, I think that's just, I don't know if that exists anywhere else.
I was actually just thinking that. I don't think there is another duo.
No.
There isn't another
Ant and Dec.
Yeah. Oh, well, I suppose actually, no, there is a few duos that exist, but I suppose, there is one other duo, but I'm not going to name who these people are because I've not asked that permission, but there definitely is there isn't a duo of two care experienced people who both decided to share their experiences independently of each other and then met at one glorious university all that time ago to do service user engagement, which is actually how we met. Yeah.
And I think the reason for that is I don't know what the landscape looks like now, but then it was even more unheard of for us to get together because we were almost competitors. So when I was doing my business plan, right, for my business, my website, I had to obviously look and explore around who was my competitors. And obviously, you would have been considered as one of them. The difference was why you was never considered one was because you weren't from my area.
You were significantly better than me.
Oh, there's that, right? There's that.
Yeah, looked at me, I was like...
No competition.
Luke who?
No, but you were the most known. So for those of you who don't know, Luke Speaks was it, right?
How many of you remember that?
Talk to me. Come on.
Now the public speaking company has now returned Luke Speaks. It's been resurrected.
I love that. But it was. And so I had to look at, and because way before I even got a website or anything like that, or business cards, oh God, I remember those days, I had actual business cards. Before all of that, I had to look at who was already out there doing it, and you already had your website. And so it was looking at, with my mentors, etc., how do I go bigger? How do I reach more people? But the beauty is, and I think even though you was a competitor technically in a business sense, why I think we realised we were better together than apart was because we were doing very different things. In terms of our focus, our aim was the same in terms of improving outcomes, but our interests and our knowledge and how we get to that outcome so beautifully just work together. They were links, right? So your business knowledge, then my social work, and all of this just came together, and we just went, I knew Luke through the years, for those who don't know. Luke, the PT, who would always tell me that what I was eating wasn't the right thing to eat, who would always be walking with a smoothie, who was just about to start his backpacking around the world journey. Right? Who used to walk in what can only be described.
I also feel like I want to ask Sam, the video man, to get me the smoothie out of the fridge. Just to show people that actually the Luke carrying the smoothie still exists.
Here we go.
Yeah, I mean, this is this is banana, this is peanut butter, this is, protein powder with almond milk. So it's still, thanks for showing that, Sam.
My point is, right, when we talk about relationships, in particular for young people, we have this, I say we, as adults, there's this whole, the influences, that others can have. But we never talk about the positive influences, those real good, because you never influenced me enough to drink one of your smoothies.
Yet.
There's still time. No, but
What sort of smoothie would you be influenced to drink?
None.
Yeah.
But the influence on how I view the world and people absolutely was a positive one. And so...
I share that. I think on the relationship that we hold, it's interesting you say competition. I think that there is no competition in this space yet, just as a side point, because I think there is only a small amount of people that are doing it compared to the available work. So therefore, when I'm thinking about relationships, one thing that doesn't exist that I wish did was some kind of space where we all came together, and imagine what it would look like if everyone in the lived experience space all worked in one space, the power of it. And then that learning that you and I have had would constantly happen. And some of the things that I've learned from you, which I really like, I remember my sort of style on the stage was very much kind of like comedy, bit of controversy. Like I'd be like, pow, 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 pow. And then your style was a lot more measured. You were very, very kind of like intellectual, and you just delivered points that were so complex in such a simple and bite-sized way, and very precise, where I think I kind of was just like, yes, story time. You were like, okay, let's just douche, 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 douche. And I think that's influenced the way I facilitate training now. So in my head, when I'm thinking about training, I'm thinking about what are the specific things that I want people to take away from this. What is the story that's going to be in this? What is the theory that's going to be in this? And what is the action?
What's the point?
Yeah. So, and I always, sharing the time when we facilitated training one time together. And, I remember we'd had this session with some young people, and we were sat in the room together, and, you were leading. I was co-facilitating. I'd never heard the phrase co-facilitator before you taught me it. Yeah. And you were like, basically, I'm going to lead, but then I'll nod at you if I need something at some point. And I'm like, all right, cool. Anyway, I'm sat at the back of the room with this young person who's having a laugh, so I'm having a laugh with them. And then you're like looking at me, being like, nod. And I'm thinking, I'm doing the right thing. I'm co-facilitating this space. And I was really proud of myself. Then afterwards, you sat me down and you were like, what you did there was not okay. And I was like, why? That young person, I was having the best time ever. You were like, you were distracting the whole room, and you were letting that young person know that it's okay to distract the whole room through the facilitator enabling it. So, yeah, I've never actually apologised for that. So, sorry.
Okay.
Ow. Ow.
Oh,
sorry, can I have a moment, please? Can we just cut while I have a bit of a break? Because that was...
No, I think it's so interesting, because I think, the jokes, the journeys, the memories you and I have had, but also that deep reflection. I think it just goes without being said sometimes, or maybe it's just assumed that because we both had care experience, we would then in turn talk about our care experiences. And actually it did the opposite, because with you and with me, hopefully in the same space, we didn't ever have to. I just want to explain the reason why I do this is because that was just free from anything. And instead it was about, wow, what a powerful story you have. Could you consider saying it this way for that group, or this way for that? Or what would your point be there from there? And I just think the way that we was able to each grow and develop how we shared lived experiences in particular spaces was just, powerful.
And I suppose like relationships need to complement each other, because there were like certain things that you were really strong at. There were certain things that I were really strong at. And then when we used to work together, I remember working for a particular council one time where something quite bad was happening. We'd been thrown in to find the bad thing, aka be scapegoated to go, oh, look, this organisation came in. They found that bad thing and now we've fixed it. But they knew about the bad thing before we arrived, which is really bad actually to put us in that position. But I remember there was a time where a difficult conversation had to happen, and I was quite confident and happy about having this difficult conversation. And I can remember us sitting next to each other in this particular organisation that brought in their legal people. And I kind of like constructed a series of questions to lead them in to the point where we was like, okay, cool. So you did know about this before. And all I remember is this foot kicking me under the table. Being like, stop. But I think that's useful because those conversations need to happen.
Yeah.
And like, you know, there is, we complement each other, which I really...
And I think there's such a huge benefit in co-working in this space. Okay, because it doesn't exist in any other space. There's no, you'll see job adverts go out for lived experience. They're not asking for 2 or 3, you know, because I do think our experiences, our knowledge, our skills led to us both being able to grow in different areas. Because you're right, I didn't like those uncomfortable conversations. And from a business perspective, that's why that wouldn't have worked for me necessarily. But equally, like you said, the skills in learning how to facilitate and develop and did it. And so the two work so well. But yet we're in a space where lived experience is seen as an isolated thing. And I get that because your experience is nowhere near the same as mine. But the trauma and the hurt is the same, right? We never had to speak about how hard things were, because it was just unspoken and known. This was the only relationship I was in as an adult where I didn't have to say, just so you know, or I didn't have to trigger warn somebody, or I didn't have to explain why I act the way I act. It was just known. And I think that whole co-working is so important. If you're going to hire or employ lived experience based on lived experience, make sure that the person supporting them is available and can do back and forth. Because, God, you know, there were dark times at the same time because you and I were in a state where the system wasn't authentically considering young people's voices. I know people can't imagine that now. And even though people who are in it now knows that that still needs work. Luke, you know, the spaces you and I were in, you know, we took on some of those tokenistic roles and we knew we were doing it. We knew we were being asked. And we felt like we'd take the heat, we'd take the bullet almost in order to, and we'd caveat that we would do this so long as you let us do that. But it needed 2 of us to be able to have those conversations on both sides.
Yeah. So like, it's a really fascinating space when you think about how much youth participation, which is what it was called, or when we first started working in this space to where it is now. And that there is something in what you're saying, which is about actually the relationships that you and I hold with each other, our relationship. I don't know why I'm making it sound like it's something that we hold. Our amazing relationship that we have has like supported ourselves through some of that stuff. And I love the facts because I've just actually had the insight. I'm like, actually, I don't think we've really ever sat down and said, hey, this is my life story and that's your life story. Like I actually realised that I know what I know from our conversations, but I definitely can't think of a time where we've sat down.
Never. I've heard you speak. You've heard me speak.
That's it.
In the agreed aims of whatever we were speaking for, but that was enough because we bonded on. This isn't right. I want to change.
Yeah.
Do you? Yes. Then let's do that.
That's because that's so interesting. Because I suppose when we're thinking about relationships now and like in social care, I hear this narrative all of the time that people are like, "Well, I need to know this person's story to be able to support and to help them."
Right.
Like we don't know each other's story, but actually we just care about each other, and we had this common goal and this shared vision. So and we just came together in that space, and we've worked from that space,
and it worked well. And it's lasted.
Yeah.
In whatever changes, my family grew. We've never lived in the same city, never mind the same part of England.
Yeah.
You know, and yet here we still are. No matter what happens, keep coming back to that. And let's be honest, so everybody knows, we don't agree on a lot of things. We don't.
Since when? Hang on. What? No, I'm serious. What, you don't agree with everything that I say? This is new. This is new information for me.
Lots of things. We've had discussions when we've been invited to services to do a piece of work, and I've got my non-negotiables, you've had yours, and then we've got the business non-negotiables, then we've got but what if, and we've had to go around in circles sometimes between us around, is this the right thing to do? Is it tokenistic? Is it ethical? Does it sit right with us? Are we okay with doing this? And we'll be honest, you know, and sometimes we've exposed ourselves in order for the greater good, or we've given talked about our lived experience in times where we said we were done with that now, and we've done it based on, okay, better is us that goes than somebody else, right? And by somebody else, we're not talking about other lived experience leaders. We're talking about that whoever they invite, they haven't supported and they don't have that knowledge you and I have. And so they'd just be exposed and left vulnerable. And that used to really annoy us so much. But it's just...
Yeah, there definitely needs to be when we're... I want to ask a question, but I want to caveat that. I want to ask the question of what is the best and worst thing about working together.
Okay.
So I'll give you some time to think about it. I'm sure the worst thing...
I don't think
stop writing a really long list. Yeah. But you're right. I suppose when we're thinking about care experience people, those who have experience working in this space and what sort of relationships do they need to be able to do it effectively, I see it a lot. You get someone that will go on the stage, they will share a raw story, they come off the stage and then they're flooded with people. And
requests, demands.
Yeah, and it's like, actually, like, one of the things I would say to the listeners, like, if we're going to bring people that have got lived experience in to share their stories on the stage, which we will continue to do, once that's over, like, or at least ask them, like, do you need a space afterwards to be able to decompress? I know once I've done my keynote, I'm straight outside, I'm decompressed, and I'm running away. Do you know what I mean? I'm just like, give me the time to reflect, to capture my thoughts. There might have been something said that I found difficult. There might have been something I wish I didn't say. And if you've not got somebody there to kind of go, actually, did I say that right? Didn't I say that right? And that's having that honest feedback. It's one of the things that I really appreciate about our relationship. So given that this is on the topic of relationships, one of the things I might say to our listeners is like, be honest, like be radically honest. Like if you recognise that like a young person or someone that is maybe even speaking on the stage, maybe just a young person that you're working with, has shared a part of their experience that they kind of say, I'm fine with it, like, and you see that they're not, like, just check in with them.
Because you carry a lot when you're on that stage, whether it be at a conference, whether it be in a small group, whether it be in training, you carry a lot. And one of the things that's always held or stuck with me when sharing my lived experience has always been, oh, did they get what I meant? Or, gosh, have I just upset somebody now? Because when you share your lived experience story, you are always mindful of the sympathy side of things. And that was never my intention. I never wanted people to feel sad for me because I'm stood here and I'm okay right now. And so I want you to go forth with that hope for that, yes, that drive, that motivation to change things rather than
Did you always feel, obviously what I'm doing right now is avoiding the best and worst things. I'm just like, we'll leave that until we've got 44 minutes and go, we're over. I can't hear all of the worst things about me because you're going to have to support me afterwards after I'm traumatized. But seriously, like when you were sharing your story on the stage and, did you 100% know exactly what you were going to say? Did you know exactly what you wanted the audience to hear? Like, did you get up there and think, okay, this is exactly what this audience is going to take from this?
But I think that's the brilliancy of our relationship, right? Because we talked through that.
Yeah.
We would reframe the narrative was a key thing that we used to say all the time, right? And it was something we absolutely believed in. And so one of the things that I learned in particular, so it's on the list, so you might want to make note of this, that you really taught
me. Ready.
That was brilliant, was hearing my story or watching me keynote speak or share my lived experience and then going, okay, then Karylle, now tell us somebody positive that made a difference. Because I was I came into this with the social workers aren't good, foster carers weren't great, and all the bad sides of my care experience, which was still my narrative, right? And we weren't hiding that fact. But at every point, when you helped me to think about, well, tell me somebody positive at that time, it really shocked me because I was so caught up in this quite negative story that you don't realize the impact that has. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Then you and I have spoke about this, where if I'm only sharing the negative parts of my life, I'm also internalizing that I am no good and I don't have anything positive about me, and I'm just fueling all the things that people had said or written about me, right? Whereas when you helped me to really focus on it, every one of those stages, Karylle, when you share your story, name a positive person or a positive time that you remember that helped bring it back to, okay, so this is a positive, and then you'd say, and what did they do? And share that, and that's when the switch in the audience would go from sympathy or poor her to, whoa.
Because you're giving people tools then. I mean, that is the power of relationships, is that I genuinely and deeply believe that once you leave care and you reflect back on your life, there are moments that you've had while you're in care that people have illustrated that have made a difference. And it might be like the foster care that's tried so hard every single day to get through to you, but at the time they were trying to do that, you were not ready.
Survival mode.
Yeah, exactly. Like, your relationship, your threat, because relationships in the past have been threatening. So you get to this point of reflection later in life and you look back on those kind of narratives and then you remember what people said and did. And I think it influences you when you get older. You kind of like, I remember what they said then.
100%.
I remember what I know what they mean now. Or people actually did care. And I think there is an important thing to reflect upon that, because then all of a sudden you don't look back at all of your life experience and go, oh, it was all bad. Everything is bad. You're like, actually, people did try. People did want to help. I just maybe wasn't ready. And it's a shame because none of that is measured. None of that is caught in data. You know, you leave care, you've had loads of unstable placements, you've got low education, you know, you're likely to end up homeless, to name all of the kind of things that we hear all of the time. But actually, if you really think about it, when you look back, you absolutely had people that tried their hardest to make a difference in your life. And yes, you did have people that didn't try. But the power of those that did try
outweigh
significant difference in your later life.
And that's why it's so important, right, that we have lived experience leaders and we have people sharing their lived experience. So when people feel as though the market is saturated now with everybody's got a lived experience, it's so important because actually those lived experience leaders, and you'll see them, right? I see them on social media. They're always pinpointing that one person or those people that did and that person never knew. And so for me, it's about not giving back in that regard, but why not give that hope back? Because those people, those practitioners across my life, your life, would never have known the difference they had, they'd hope it was them, right? But they'd never know unless I became a lived experience speaker. Because if I didn't, half the people I now know who I call friends, who were practitioners at the time, would never know that they were the good people. And that, I guess that spurs them on, that motivates and drives them, right, to continue doing what they do.
I've just written down on my paper morale, because I suppose, like, what is the impact of relationships? Why are relationships meaningful? Is morale, like sharing positive stories or real stories. They don't always need to be positive, because you can have a positive outcome from a difficult experience.
Right.
A social worker that might say to me, Luke, what you're doing right now is absolutely ridiculous. You're being an idiot and you're behaving in this particular way. Could be seen as quite a negative experience. But now as an adult, when I look back, I'm like, oh, thank gosh they said me that, because like that,
because that's what I remember.
That felt difficult and hard. But now I realise why. And then to share that story with our community, social workers, foster carers, everybody, to say that really tricky conversation that I had made a significant difference in my life. And now I'm thinking in this way, or I'm doing that because of this thought, I'm motivated in this way. The audience are then like, I want to do some of that then. I want to go back and...
Imagine if you
I'm going to go back and tell my young person they're being an idiot.
Right, yeah.
All in context.
But hopefully what it would have done as well is they'll be in our audience, yours and I's along the journey, or whoever else now is sharing their lived experience. And it will give them hope, because what other celebration do they get? Let's be honest, in terms of children's social work, what other areas of celebration do they get from the people who have used or have been involved in their service? Other than to hear later on, some people do make it out and some people do, because otherwise it can all be so negative and they don't go to this, they don't do that, they're more likely to... it can be quite disheartening. Yeah,
and even that language, they don't do this, they don't do that. It's all like blame language. It's all like, they are the problem here. When actually, like, no. I mean, one of the things that I realised as an adult working in care, trying to build relationships with not just young people, but also like trying to build relationships with adults, is that, like, if you're constantly hearing negative data, you're constantly feeling like you're failing. Therefore, your bar becomes so low that actually, if you achieve that bar or just a little bit over it,
good enough.
Yeah, then it's okay. It's good enough, and that's the theory that I love is the Pygmalion effect, which is what they did with teachers. They said, "Here's a bad group of kids. Here's a good group of kids. Go and teach them. The bad kids did bad. The good kids did good." But the thing about it, which made it completely unethical, when psychology was actually interesting, is that they weren't bad or good kids. They were picked completely at random, and the test was on the teacher. If you think about a particular group in a certain way? Does it influence the outcome? And every single time was yes, until they made this kind of psychology illegal. And now you need to go to an ethics committee to get a survey signed off in case you upset somebody with a question.
I mean, look.
Can't say boo to a goose.
And so, look, I think that's a clear example of our relationship that Luke would always come with.
Find a random group of children, let's test on them. By the way, I've got to say, I wouldn't really do that.
No.
Yeah.
And I always said no.
Yeah.
But, but you would always come
like
with
Pinky in the Brain.
These areas of theory that were beyond my knowledge, that were outside of what I was given as a in terms of the route I was on, the social work journey. And so you were always coming with, but have we thought about it like this, Karylle? And let's give them this, and let's, and for me, the key thing that really worked in our relationship was initially when we started, we were training and giving speeches to groups of people that weren't given that formal training. So if you didn't do social work, that was pretty much it. You almost had to figure it out as you went along. I'm talking aftercare advisors, foster carers, for those who don't know, Luke and I were born in the 1900s. So this is way before fostering, training, accreditation. This is way before aftercare advisors having a certain route of this. We're talking about a time where if you didn't do social work, you didn't have all the knowledge that social workers had. And so there was large groups of practitioners who didn't know and would sit and say to us as foster carers, I've been a foster care for 15 years, but I still don't know what does LAC mean, or I still don't know what's the role of an IRO. All these types of things, like the virtual school didn't even exist when I was in care, and so all these things, there was large groups of people with years of experience that were doing brilliant jobs, but were left outside of that knowledge base. So
to caveat that, that's really interesting because I remember also when we were running around the country, was foster carers saying to us, I wish people would treat me more like a professional. And I remember at first we'd been like, foster carers need more professional training.
We were going to change the whole name. Let's not tell people that.
Let's give them professional training, professional training. Yeah. And then I remember coming to the realisation, actually, it isn't that because foster carers are looking at their professional peers, and what they're doing is they're saying, those professional peers get more support than we do. We actually want the same amount of support. And I absolutely agree. Foster carers should get support that equates to their professional peers by far, for sure. Because, foster carers play such a significant role. But what I now think is that it isn't that foster carers need to be treated more like professionals or be seen as professionals, is that the system needs to focus more on being human, on relationships. And that, in fact, those that are in professional positions, there needs to be something in the form of relationship that enables them to act in a way that is meaningful and authentic.
Absolutely.
There isn't just this terminology of let's do relationship-focused practice. Even the phrase is professional. What does that mean?
Because then there's a checklist with it. There's all these things that come along with relationship-based practice, which is great. Right, but it's just another thing being done that there's a whole group of people that have been doing it without the label, been doing it without the accreditation.
Professionalising relationships, you're literally giving it, let's do relationship-focused practice. What does that mean? Because I think that's what happens. People are like...
And it's unfortunately, depending on what system or service you're in, it would look very different, right? Because I think you started by saying we never had to share all the terrible things that went on between us in our own lives before we met. We just met and went forward from there. And so, like you said, some practitioners will be like, now you tell me everything and I can support you. And then that's the relationship, as though the relationship is sharing of information.
Yeah.
But we know there's always an unfair disadvantage or an advantage there. Because
maybe what young people should do, and I'm probably going to get told off for saying this on the podcast, but maybe a young person should say, why don't you tell me about your trauma? Because could you imagine how much of a back foot people would be on the like, well, that's not how this works,
But there's lots of conversation. And we were in it, right? We were in the heat of the moment. So for those, that don't know, so during our journey across the millennium, at some point we were in the space where the theme, and I hate to say it, but the theme and the focus at that time, because we've seen many themes, right? We know what the theme is right now. The theme at one point of our journey was do practitioners share their lived experiences or personal experiences with other young people? And there was this whole debate and discussion going on. And I think it still goes on in some places, but because we've got more lived experience leaders within positions now, that it's almost a natural thing anyway. But then it was a taboo that you shouldn't. There was lots of organisations saying, no, our social workers, our practitioners should not share with young people certain information about themselves, of fear, as though there was this fear that if young people in care found out you lived somewhere or had something or knew something, that would be used against you. So it was just, I remember that time being so crazy, because we were advocating at the time for share, but it had to be done off. And again, we just kept pushing for your and I's aim was, it has to be authentic. It doesn't matter which side of the fence you sit on. It has to be authentic. It can either be an authentic, I'm not willing to share that, I'm not comfortable. Or it can be an authentic, I will share this not because I want you to think I know what you're going through, but rather than I'm sharing it so you recognise you're not an alien in this, you're not the only one. Like we all, and I'm human.
What I love about our relationship then is like how like our mindsets have evolved. Because like now I would really interrogate the idea of sharing, and I'd be like, sharing for what purpose?
Yes, that's so interesting.
Sharing for what purpose? Because because I've got lots of colleagues that are care experienced that don't communicate their care experience, and they're in professional spaces. So I've learned from there, and I feel quite proud, and not proud, actually, it's not the right word. I feel privileged for those individuals to come up to me and say, hey, I'm care experienced, but I like to keep it to myself. And one person that I'm thinking of particularly is like, I don't want to, I'm happy to share my experience, but I don't want that to be the cheat code for the relationship. Because I suppose sometimes you share it, you've got that cheat code, and then what does that line look like? And I remember one foster carer I had, which is a story, which is maybe where like sharing your experiences can, why maybe people might challenge it. One foster carer, I was kind of mentoring this young person sort of unofficially. We all lived in the same area, and this young person, they smoked a bit of dope, and they thought they were be hard about it. They're like, smoking outside, and they're thinking, oh, well, you think you're hard smoking dope. Like, Luke smokes so much dope and they smoke so much dope all over this. Jesus and was basically like, you're just having a little bit. Luke was like, basically smokes all the time. So, like, pipe your ego down, which I think was the kind of intention.
The plan, yeah.
This kid really looked up to me. And I remember being like, why did you just tell him that? Now that all of a sudden says to him, well, Luke's turned out all right.
So let me continue.
Therefore I'll continue. And I remember being like, oh, so I suppose there is like, there is caveats to sharing experience. If it's to share, to say, hey, listen, it feels in this moment, I think people should have the authority and the ownership to be able to share.
Absolutely.
I think there's caveats to it, but I think if it's in the space where it's like, I actually want you to know that I understand what you're going through right now, and there is ways to then communicate that empathy.
Agreed.
I
think it needs to be. And I know in our relations, I always said to you, what's the point? One of the things I learned was always, what's the point? What's the point? What's the point? And so my foster carer just so happened to have also been in care, never told me that until I'd left care and had an adult relationship with her. And I was always like, why didn't you tell me that? She was like, but what would have been the point? Because it's true. She could have said she was carved by the gods and it wouldn't have made any difference to me, because I still was fueled by hatred for her because she represented the system and the service. Her telling me she was in care would have meant nothing to me. Absolutely. Whereas it might have meant something to somebody else at a different time. And so she felt that telling me would never have made the difference at any point at that time, because it would have made it about her.
You've just raised as well, like, such a crucial point there, is that like actually even if she did share her experience, or even if she did communicate with you in that way, you already have a perception of her that she represents a system that you are completely rejecting.
Would have just been one part of her identity to me.
Yeah.
Whereas right now you're a foster carer.
Yeah.
And you're ruining my life.
You're in the way.
You're in the way.
Yeah.
You're the problem.
Yeah. So I suppose when we're thinking about relationships, children's social care, adults having relationships with the young people that they're taking care of, people try really, really, really hard to have relationships. And I suppose one of the things that people maybe have to realise is that actually, whether you're a foster carer, whether you're a social worker, whatever your relationship is to children's social care, there are young people that will look at you and say, you're in the way.
Yeah.
And actually, when social care, which we hear this narrative all the time, when social care moves out of the way, when they leave care, and then look back at these relationships again, and they say, "Oh, actually,"
especially if they're still consistent and positive.
Yeah. So I suppose I'm just trying to think of like something I wanted to say to the listeners, like, because lots of people experience that. Like, I'm trying really hard here, and you're just
not getting anywhere.
pushing, and this is absolutely really difficult. And one of the things that really winds me up is when I hear people say, "Oh, well, if that young person challenges you, that's because they feel safe to do so, and they're testing the boundaries." That might be true.
I say that sometimes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let me tell you something. Let me tell you my view.
But this is what we do, so go for it.
That might be true.
It might
and
be.
I believe it's true.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you do what I'm about to suggest, and you can challenge back openly and freely. I don't know why I need to give you permission to do it. I'm actually just going to duck under the table right now and just move out of the way. Like, for me, that's a painful experience for that adult. So, like, are we then doing something as well to say, and that must be really challenging for you, so how do we support you? And I think that's the bit that's missed. We kind of go, you should just expect to be that this happens, and you should be grateful and happy that it happens. Actually, that's so hard when you pouring all of your energy into somebody, they're pushing back, and then when someone says, "Oh, actually, this is a good thing," yeah, it might be, and I'm sure it is a good thing, but they need support with that, because that is so tough.
100% agree.
Getting nothing in return.
Agree.
Or even worse, being challenged.
I take back my challenge. Yes. Because I agree. Because the challenge. Because I'm
going to get out my ninja sword. And just like a
I say that in training. I say that especially to educators, that, you know, you might be the safe space, and this is the first time that a child or young person can explore those boundary pushings, because at home or in other spaces they're unable to. They're silenced, right? So that doesn't help you as a practitioner, because hello, I'm trying to do a nice, good thing here. But the most important part is, you're right, is where's the support for those practitioners? Because this idea that relationship, it's exhausting. Relationships are hard. And especially when you're trying to build relationships with people that have been hurt within the context of relationships, those people are absolutely saying no. It's almost like, okay, I went skydiving, right? Broke my leg.
We know. Well, actually, we might not know.
Oh, they might not know.
No. I know.
You know.
Yeah.
And
were you supposed to be doing something very soon after with us? I can't quite remember.
No, I made it to the awards.
The awards? Yeah.
Was there something else? There was something else, and I couldn't come because I couldn't get on the train on my own.
Yeah, but I remember being like, "Oh, hey, Karylle, like, we're doing this thing together. Where you at?" And I just got a picture of your leg.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Like, hello.
Yeah, thanks.
Don't forget.
No, I mean it's scarred into my memory.
Good.
Carry on.
But,
so you're a skydiver.
I'm not a skydiver, successful skydiver anyway. So I broke my leg. And so the reality is, if that happened to me, the likelihood of me going skydiving again, nobody would even bat an eyelid if I said, but you know what, I'm never going to do that again. Everyone would go, yeah, fair, you know, because the risk, and for you, it was a reality. But when children and young people have even faced trauma or have been harmed within the context of relationships, the rush to get them to build them again is just, it's like throwing me back out of the plane. They're like, hold on. Just accept that this was where I found my trauma. This is where the hurt came from. Why are you forcing me back to do people in again?
I think it's called immersion therapy.
Oh, here we go. You do that thing again.
I think, but I mean, no one's qualified to do it. It's like if you're scared of spiders,
sit with a spider.
I'll put you in a room full of spiders.
Oh.
No, the concept's called flooding. And the idea was another exciting psychological experiment we used to do. Yeah, I love it. I mean, why don't we do this stuff anymore? Like, oh, you're scared of spiders? Just go into that room over there.
Get over it.
Yeah, well, that's maybe what we're unintentionally doing here, is like actually recognizing that your relationships have been difficult. Yeah.
And then we're assessing them, and then we're almost in turn punishing them for that. So all the story all along is, Karylle doesn't build positive relationships. Karylle can't build, as if that was a default of mine. You know, nobody's ever going to look back and say Karylle didn't jump out the plane the second time. They're just going to go, absolutely. If anything, Karylle, now that you've done that and that's happened, you know, the amount of people who said, it was on my bucket list and I'm not going to do it again. Right? And so nobody is forcing me to do that again, and nobody's judging me for not doing it again. And so, yes, relationships are important and they're key for human growth and development. But you don't have to have a million of them in order to have success with one.
I feel sorry for skydiving companies now, because you know so many people, you're so popular and you're so influential that now they've basically lost about 50% of their client base because of...
Just to pull it out there, I was told whilst lying on the floor waiting for the air ambulance that
this might be painful, but it's a good thing. The pain that you're feeling in your leg means it's healing. It means it's genuinely broken.
We're all here with you. We've got this. We'll heal it together. No, what they did say was, this is a 1 in 5,000 chance that this happens to 1 in 5,000 people. Yeah.
You've always been an anomaly, haven't you? I mean, like, that's a fantastic thing about you, is you are literally one of a kind.
Broke my leg, fell from a plane.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, and I just think, if we just think and take a step back, sometimes we can be forced into thinking, and I get it, some people just don't have time, all right? So time's a factor, because they can be working with children and young people for a specific amount of time, and the end goal, in order to achieve that outcome or whatever that target or goal is required through a relationship, right? That can set those practitioners up to fail, where they feel as though, God, I'm just not getting anywhere. But also for the young person to keep experiencing forced contact, forced relationship. Do you know what I mean? It would only increase your wall going up again. If every morning I woke up and there was the plane outside going, come on, let's go do it again. It would only make me go, do you know what? I'm just fed up with this. So I think relationships in general just need to be, you need to know what you're in it for. With you, there was nothing I was getting from this. It was one of the first relationships where I might have achieved and got something out of it in terms of professional stuff, career growth, finances, business, right? But you weren't requiring anything from me. There was nothing here that enabled this relationship. There wasn't a, Karylle, if you do this, then we can be friends. It was just a case of, we'll be friends regardless whether you say yes or no to wanting to do this. And so, yeah, that was why.
And family. And, so, Karylle, we're gonna have to bring this to a close.
We've done it again.
I mean, no, it actually has to close now. I mean, we're done.
Done?
But before we go, I'm just really happy that I avoided what was the worst thing about working with you. So maybe we can talk about that.
And another one?
Never,
okay. Brilliant.
What were you going to say?
No.
Yeah.
Done.
Is it going to be a bad thing? Because I'm just going to close this right now and this podcast.
End.
Done.